Tom stood in the dim glow of his cabin, the warmth from the fire flickering softly as he sipped his tea. The snowstorm raged outside, the wind howling through the trees, battering the cabin's walls with an icy fury. He'd been alone for days, the isolation becoming both familiar and unsettling. The crackling of the fire was the only sound that filled the space until, suddenly, a faint noise broke the silence, a soft scratching at the door. At first, he thought it was the wind, pushing against the wood. But then it came again, louder this time, followed by a soft whimper. Tom set his tea down, brow furrowing with concern. He walked cautiously toward the door, his boots scraping against the wooden floor, each step slow and deliberate. As he reached for the doorknob, his heart raced. He opened it just a crack, and the cold air surged in, biting at his skin. Standing in the snow was a German shepherd. Its fur, once thick and shiny, was matted with ice and snow, its body trembling violently from the cold. The dog looked up at him with wide, desperate eyes, almost pleading. Its breath came in ragged puffs, and its body shivered uncontrollably. Despite its physical condition, there was a sense of loyalty in its eyes, an unwavering trust and hope that seemed out of place given the circumstances. The dog didn't bark or beg, it simply stood there, looking at Tom as though it had been waiting for something, or someone, for a long time. For a moment, Tom stood frozen in place, unsure of what to do. The storm outside raged on, and the dog's condition was beyond evident. It was weak, hungry, and freezing, but still, it waited. Tom's heart softened at the sight. He stepped forward, instinctively reaching out to the dog, his voice gentle. "Come on, girl," he said, his words more for himself than the animal. "Get in here before you freeze to death out there." The dog took a hesitant step forward, then another. Its paws barely lifted from the ground, each movement slow and cautious, as if unsure whether to trust him. Tom stepped back, holding the door open wider. "Come on," he urged softly, his voice filled with warmth and sincerity. The dog glanced at him, then at the door, before taking one more step. It was as if it was deciding to trust him, or perhaps it simply had no other choice. Slowly, it crossed the threshold into the warmth of the cabin. The moment the dog entered, the warmth of the room hit it like a wave. It trembled even harder now, the sudden change in temperature causing its body to shiver uncontrollably. Tom watched with concern as the dog stood, frozen in place, unsure of what to do next. Its muscles tensed, and its body was still shaking from the cold. He quickly shut the door behind it, cutting off the harsh wind and the howling storm outside. Tom crouched down slowly, trying not to startle the dog, and placed a hand on its side. The German shepherd flinched slightly at the touch, but then it relaxed, just a little. Tom's heart ached as he noticed the thinness of the dog, how her ribs pressed against her fur, her coat a patchwork of dirt and ice. Her eyes, though weary, looked at him with something more than just fear. There was a flicker of hope, of trust. Despite everything, she had made it this far. Tom rose to his feet and quickly grabbed a bowl from the kitchen. He filled it with warm water and set it down in front of the dog. The German shepherd eyed him cautiously, her amber eyes narrowing, but after a few moments of hesitation, she stepped forward, bending her head down to lap at the water. Tom watched silently, the connection between them growing ever so slightly. After a long drink, the dog lifted her head and glanced at him again. Her tail, though stiff, gave a tentative wag. Tom took that as a sign. He hurried to the pantry, finding the last of the canned food, and opened it with a soft pop. He placed the food down beside the water. "Here," he said, his voice soft and reassuring. "Eat something. You've been through a lot." The German shepherd sniffed the food but didn't eat immediately. She stood there, wary but no longer trembling as violently. Tom watched her, his heart heavy with compassion. There was something about this dog, something familiar. His mind raced, wondering where she came from. How had she ended up so lost? Was she abandoned? And why, after all this time, did she trust him enough to come into his home? Tom sat down slowly in his armchair, gazing at the dog as she continued to eye him warily. There was an unspoken understanding between them now, though the dog still held a careful distance. Tom couldn't help but reflect on his own life. He had been alone for years now, since his retirement, since the passing of his wife. His days had been filled with silence, with the quiet of the forest, and the steady crackle of his fireplace. He hadn't realized how much he missed companionship, even the simple presence of another being in the house. But this was different. This was not a mere animal looking for food or shelter. This was a dog with a story, a dog who had suffered, who had fought against the odds. And now, somehow, she had found her way to him. As the dog cautiously settled on the floor, her body curling slightly into itself as if for warmth and safety, Tom felt a deep sense of connection growing. He wasn't sure what her past was, or why she had come to him, but he knew one thing: he couldn't turn her away. She had made her way through the storm, through hardship, and she had ended up here, at his door, looking for help. For the first time in a long while, Tom didn't feel quite so alone. He stretched out his hand toward the dog, his movements slow and careful. He stroked her head gently, unsure if she would accept his touch, but when she did, it was as if a silent bond had been formed. There was no growl, no sharp warning, just a quiet acceptance. Tom sat there, his hand resting on the dog's head, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over him. Whatever her story was, whatever had happened to her, he knew he couldn't turn his back. As the night wore on, the warmth of the fire and the presence of the dog filled the cabin, and for the first time in a long while, Tom didn't feel the cold loneliness that had been his companion for so many years. The German shepherd, though weary and scarred, had brought something new into his life: purpose. And in return, Tom would help her heal. The chapter ends with Tom silently deciding to do whatever it took to care for the dog. He had no idea what would come next, but for the first time in a long while, he was ready to face it. The morning after Max arrived at the cabin, Tom woke up to the sound of the dog's soft whimpers. The fire had burned low in the hearth, casting faint shadows across the room. Max lay curled up on the floor near the warmth, still shivering despite the warmth around him. Tom slowly got out of bed, stretching as he rubbed his eyes, his mind still heavy with the events of the previous night. As he moved toward the dog, he saw that Max was awake, his eyes flicking to Tom, but the dog didn't move, still weary from the ordeal. Tom bent down carefully, taking a closer look at Max. The dog's body was frail, thinner than he had initially realized. His ribs were visible through the matted fur, and Tom could feel the sharpness of his bones when he gently ran his hand along the dog's side. The fur, once thick and healthy, was now stiff with ice, clumps of snow still clinging to the tips of his coat. Max's paws were raw, cracked and worn from walking for days in harsh conditions. There were signs of old cuts, dried blood, and small pieces of debris stuck in the fur between his toes. Tom could see the weight of exhaustion in his every movement. Max's eyes, once filled with desperation, now seemed to show something deeper: sadness, maybe even resignation. Tom's heart ached for the dog. How had he ended up like this? What could have caused him to wander alone for so long? The thoughts swirled in Tom's mind as he continued to inspect Max, his eyes narrowing as he tried to piece together the story. There was no visible collar, no identification, just a dog who had clearly been through something terrible. As Max stirred, Tom crouched down beside him, his voice soft. "You've been through a lot, haven't you, boy?" Tom murmured, offering his hand slowly, hoping that Max would accept his touch. Max looked at Tom, then gently nudged his hand with his nose, still tentative but no longer afraid. Tom smiled faintly, the beginning of a bond forming between them. It was then that Tom noticed Max's behavior, which, over the course of the morning, began to reveal more about the dog's past. Max's head turned toward the window, his ears perked as he gazed out at the falling snow. He didn't move from his spot, not at first, just staring out into the wilderness, as if waiting for something or someone. His posture was still alert, but there was an unmistakable sense of anticipation in his movements, a sense of hope that seemed both fragile and unwavering. Tom stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered woods beyond his cabin. It was clear that Max was watching the storm, but there was something more to it, something that made Tom's heart tighten. This dog was not simply watching the world outside, he was waiting. It was almost as if he expected someone to come, someone he had been hoping would return for years. Max's loyalty was evident in the way he watched, his gaze fixed on the unknown. Tom wondered what had happened to this dog, what had caused him to wait for so long. Had he been abandoned? Had his family left him behind, and he had never stopped waiting for them? Tom couldn't help but reflect on his own life. He had spent so many years serving others as a firefighter, always focused on the job, never having time to slow down and think about his own needs. When he retired, he had come to this quiet cabin, hoping for peace and solitude. But it was moments like this that reminded him of the importance of companionship, the need for connection. Max, in his own silent way, had reminded Tom of that. He had waited, hoping, despite everything, that the family who had once loved him would come back for him. And now, Tom felt a growing need to help, to give this dog the care and attention he so clearly deserved. Tom made a decision. He couldn't let Max suffer any longer, and though he wasn't sure what exactly to do, he knew he had to help him get back to full health. He needed to take Max to the vet, to make sure he was physically okay and to find out more about his past. But as Tom reached for his jacket, he noticed the hesitation in Max's eyes. The dog seemed to sense something. He was reluctant to leave the cabin, to step outside the warmth and safety Tom had provided. Max remained by the fire, his body tense, his eyes flicking between the door and Tom. He was hesitant, almost as if he knew that venturing outside again would be another challenge. "Come on, boy," Tom said softly, kneeling next to Max. He rubbed his hand along the dog's back gently. "I'm not going to hurt you. We need to get you checked out, okay?" For a moment, Max didn't move, but then he slowly stood up, his legs wobbly from the weakness in his body. He walked cautiously toward the door, pausing for a moment as if unsure. Tom opened it and led the way outside, his own breath visible in the cold air as they made their way to the truck. The drive to the veterinary clinic was slow and cautious. The roads were slick from the snow, and Tom kept the truck steady, his hands gripping the wheel as his thoughts swirled. Max, though obviously anxious about being in the truck, settled next to Tom, leaning against him for comfort. He could feel the dog's breath on his arm, soft and steady, but it was still filled with the same deep sadness. Max wasn't just physically malnourished, there was something in his eyes that made Tom wonder if this dog had been through more than just the physical trials of survival. Had he been abandoned? Had he been neglected for so long that he had lost all faith in people? At the clinic, the vet, Dr. Monroe, examined Max closely, her hands moving with professional care as she ran her fingers through the dog's matted fur and checked his bones for any signs of injury. She clicked her tongue when she saw how thin Max was, noting his poor condition and raw paws. "He's been through a lot," Dr. Monroe said. "But he's a fighter. His survival instincts are strong." Tom nodded, his throat tight. He could see that Max had endured so much, yet his will to live had carried him through. But as the doctor continued her examination, Tom couldn't help but wonder what had happened to the dog before he showed up at his cabin. Where had he come from? Why had he been alone for so long? Just as the examination was wrapping up, Tom received a phone call from the local animal shelter. He didn't recognize the number, but when he picked up, the voice on the other end was familiar. It was Sarah, the shelter's manager. "Tom, we've been looking for this dog for 7 years," Sarah said. "We've had reports about a missing German Shepherd from a family that moved out of town, but we never thought we'd find him." Tom's heart skipped a beat as Sarah explained the situation. Max had been part of a family that had moved away several years ago, leaving him behind. The family never realized they had forgotten him, never thought to come back for him. Sarah told Tom that they had been trying to find the dog ever since, but they thought he was lost forever. Tom stood frozen, Max's sad eyes looking up at him as the realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Max had been waiting for 7 years for a family that would never return. The bond between the dog and his past was clear now, and Tom understood that this dog had been through more than anyone could imagine. He had endured 7 long years of loneliness, waiting for people who had left him behind, waiting in vain. "Thank you for taking care of him," Sarah said, her voice soft. "He's a survivor. He's lucky he found you." Tom sat in the truck, his mind spinning. He had no idea what the future held for Max, but for now, he would be there for him. And whatever happened next, Tom knew one thing for certain: Max had already proven that he was stronger than anyone could have imagined. It was a quiet evening, the kind that Tom had grown used to over the years. The fire crackled softly in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the room. Outside, the wind howled against the walls of the cabin, but inside, Tom sat peacefully, enjoying the solitude he had so carefully curated since his retirement. Max lay on the rug by the fire, his once frazzled fur now softer, his breathing steady and calm after a long day of rest. The puppies, Snow and Ash, were curled up near him, their tiny bodies pressed close to their mother. Tom watched them for a moment, a soft smile tugging at his lips. The peacefulness of the scene was a far cry from the cold, desperate night when Max had appeared at his door. Suddenly, the stillness was shattered by a knock at the door. It was a sound that broke through the quiet of the cabin, pulling Tom from his thoughts. He blinked, confused at first. Who could be out there in this storm? His instincts told him it was probably someone in need, but part of him dreaded the interruption. He slowly stood, making his way to the door. His hand reached for the doorknob, hesitated, and then he opened it. Standing on the other side of the door was a woman. She looked worn and weary, her face drawn with exhaustion and guilt. Her clothes were heavy with the weight of the storm, and her eyes were filled with a deep, almost palpable sadness. She looked at Tom for a long moment before speaking. I'm sorry to disturb you," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm looking for a dog. A German Shepherd." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He could feel something in the air shift, as if the entire world held its breath. "A German Shepherd?" Tom asked, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. The woman nodded, her eyes full of emotion. "His name is Max. I didn't know he had been left behind. My family moved away, and we never thought to come back for him. I've spent the last 7 years searching for him, hoping he'd be found." She paused, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I never stopped thinking about him." Tom stood in stunned silence, the weight of her words sinking in. Max's past, the one Tom had only begun to piece together, was coming into focus. The dog, the one who had wandered through the storm to find shelter, had once belonged to this woman. A surge of emotion welled up inside Tom, but he pushed it down. He had to stay calm. He had to do what was right. "Come in," Tom finally said, stepping aside to allow her inside. The woman, still uncertain, hesitated for a moment before stepping over the threshold. She looked around the cabin, her eyes settling on Max, who was lying near the fire. Tom closed the door behind her, feeling the weight of the moment. Max had been through so much. He had waited, alone, in the cold for years. But here, in the warmth of the cabin, with Tom and his new family, Max had found peace. The last thing Tom had expected was for this woman, this stranger to him but not to Max, to show up at the door. But now, as she stepped closer to Max, Tom couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. He had grown attached to the dog, to the quiet companionship they had shared over the past few weeks. And yet, he knew what had to happen next. The woman knelt down slowly, her hand trembling as she called Max's name softly. "Max," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Max, is it really you?" For a moment, Max didn't move. He lay still, his head resting on his paws, his eyes watching the woman with an air of hesitation. Then, as if the sound of his name reached something deep inside him, Max slowly rose to his feet. He stood there for a moment, his tail twitching ever so slightly, unsure. The room seemed to hold its breath as the woman's eyes widened in disbelief, hope flickering in them like a tiny spark. "Max," she said again, this time more urgently, her voice breaking. Slowly, as if testing the waters, Max took a few cautious steps forward. His movements were still slow and deliberate, as though he wasn't sure whether to trust the woman or not. His tail wagged just the slightest bit, his body tense with uncertainty. He paused in front of her, sniffing the air around her, his nose twitching. There was a moment of stillness, as the woman held her breath, watching Max. And then, without warning, he took another step closer, his face softening as he recognized her. He sniffed her hand, then leaned forward and pressed his head into her chest. the woman gasped, her eyes filling with tears. She wrapped her arms around Max, holding him tightly as sobs racked her body. "I'm so sorry, Max," she whispered between sobs. "I never meant to leave you. I thought I could come back for you. I thought I'd find you again." Tom stood in the background, his heart aching as he watched this reunion unfold. There was something profoundly emotional about the moment. Max, despite all the years of waiting, had found his way back to his family. His loyalty had never wavered, and now, here he was, trusting the woman who had once left him behind. Max's health was still fragile, but the bond between him and Anna was undeniable. Max, though weak, seemed to melt into her arms, his body trembling not from fear or pain, but from the overwhelming relief of finding his family again. Anna broke down completely, apologizing over and over again, but Max didn't pull away. He nuzzled into her chest, as if forgiving her for the years of abandonment. Tom watched quietly, feeling both joy and sorrow in equal measure. He knew he had helped Max, but he also knew that Max belonged to Anna. The pain of letting go was palpable, but he understood that this was the right thing to do. Anna, still holding Max tightly, looked up at Tom, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to thank you for taking care of him. I've been looking for him for so long. I never thought I'd find him again." Tom nodded, a lump rising in his throat. "He's a strong dog," he said quietly. "He's been through more than anyone should. But he's a survivor." Anna smiled faintly, wiping away her tears. "I promise, I'll take care of him. I'll never leave him again." The words hung in the air, a promise that Anna made with all the sincerity in the world. Tom felt a sense of relief knowing that Max would finally be cared for properly, but at the same time, he felt a pang of sadness. Max had become a part of his life, a companion he had never expected to need, but now, the dog's journey was leading him back to his original family. "I'm sure you'll take good care of him," Tom said, his voice soft. "But you'll have to understand. I've grown attached to him too." His words felt almost too simple, but they were true. Anna nodded, understanding the gravity of what Tom had done for Max. She stepped closer to Tom, her hand trembling as she reached out to him. "I won't forget what you've done," she said. "I'll never forget you for helping him." As Max wagged his tail, looking from Anna to Tom, it became clear to both men that this was the right thing. Max had found his home again, but so had Tom, in his own way. But Tom couldn't help feeling conflicted. He had given Max a second chance at life, but now, he had to let go. It was the hardest thing he'd done in a long time. Max's past was now a part of his history, and Anna's promise to take care of him was all he could hold on to. The reunion was a bittersweet moment, but it was also a beautiful one. Max, the dog who had waited so many years, was finally going home. And Anna, the woman who had never stopped looking for him, was getting a second chance with the dog she had lost. The chapter ended with Max resting his head on Anna's lap, finally feeling safe once again, and Tom, standing in the background, silently honoring the bond that had been restored. The night before Anna was set to take Max home, Tom sat by the fire, the soft crackling of the wood the only sound in the cabin. He gazed at the flames, his mind heavy with the thoughts he had been pushing away since Anna had arrived. Max lay near the hearth, his once tired eyes now bright and alert as he slept, his body no longer trembling with the cold. The dog had found some comfort in the warmth of the cabin, but Tom knew that this peace was temporary. Tomorrow, Max will leave. Tomorrow, he would go back to the woman who had once been his family. Tom had known from the start that this moment would come. He had known that Max belonged with Anna, that this was the right thing to do. But that didn't make it any easier. Tom had become attached to the dog in a way he hadn't expected. Over the past few weeks, they had shared a bond, one forged in the quiet solitude of the cabin, in the shared understanding of two beings who had known loss and loneliness. Max had come into Tom's life in a way that felt destined, and now, Tom was faced with the difficult reality of letting him go. As Max shifted in his sleep, his amber eyes slowly opened. He lifted his head, his gaze locking onto Tom. For a moment, neither of them moved. The world outside had grown silent, the storm that had raged so fiercely now nothing more than a whisper in the distance. Max's eyes were filled with understanding, as if he knew what tomorrow would bring. It was clear that the dog had grown fond of Tom, he trusted him, he had come to rely on him, but Max knew, deep down, that his true family was with Anna. Tom sat back in his chair, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing the armrest as he watched the dog. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing on him. There was so much love between them, so much care that had blossomed in such a short amount of time. Yet, Tom understood. He knew that he had been a part of Max's journey, a part of his healing, but now it was time for him to return to the place where he truly belonged. The following morning, Tom stood by the door as Anna loaded Max into her car. The sky was clear now, the morning sun casting a golden glow over the landscape. Tom watched Anna gently coax Max into the car, her face soft with affection. Max hesitated for a moment, turning to look back at Tom with those same amber eyes that had drawn him in so completely. His tail wagged, a small, tentative movement, but he didn't jump out of the car. He didn't look back as if he was torn between two worlds. Instead, he gave one final glance toward Tom, as if to say, "Thank you." The moment was fleeting. Anna climbed into the car, starting the engine. She waved at Tom, and he waved back, his heart heavy but full of gratitude. As the car began to drive away, Tom stood there, watching it disappear down the road. Max's face appeared in the rear window for a brief moment, his eyes meeting Tom's one last time. Then the car turned the corner, and Tom was left standing on the porch, alone once more. The bond between them was undeniable. Max had come to Tom when he needed help, and in return, Tom had given him the shelter and care he needed to survive. But this was the right thing to do. Max had a family, one he had been waiting for, a family he had loved even in their absence. As the car vanished from view, Tom stood there, still and quiet, feeling both the joy of the journey they had shared and the sorrow of letting go. Max's journey was far from over, and now, he was going back to the place where it all started. Tom slowly turned back to the cabin, his footsteps heavy on the porch. He sat down in his favorite chair, his hand resting on the armrest as he watched the empty road. He couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. How had he ended up here, taking care of a dog that had wandered through a storm to find him? What had led to this moment, this unexpected reunion between Max and Anna? Tom thought about his life before Max had arrived. He had been content, but there had always been an emptiness, a silence that no amount of solitude had been able to fill. He had lived his life helping others, saving lives, but in retirement, he had lost his sense of purpose. His days had been filled with the quiet hum of routine, with no real need for connection, no real reason to reach out. But Max had changed that. Max had come to him in need, and in caring for him, Tom had found something he didn't realize he had been missing, a reason to care, a reason to open up to another living being again. The simple act of helping had renewed Tom's sense of purpose. He had given Max something precious, a second chance. And in doing so, Tom had found something he hadn't expected, the understanding that sometimes, helping others wasn't just about providing shelter or food, but about being a part of their journey. Max had come to him broken and lost, and now, he was leaving whole, returning to a family who had always loved him. Tom smiled softly as he thought about the future. Max would never forget what Tom had done for him. They had shared something special, something that would stay with both of them for the rest of their lives. But now, Max's journey was going to continue with Anna. It was a new chapter, one that Tom could only be a part of for a short while. Still, he was proud of the role he had played. He had given Max the chance to heal, to feel safe, to trust again. Sitting on the porch, Tom felt a deep sense of peace. He knew he had made the right decision. Max had been a part of his life when he needed him most, and now, he had gone back to where he belonged. The sadness he felt was bittersweet, but it was overshadowed by the joy of knowing he had helped. As the day wore on, Tom stood up, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lift off his shoulders. He had done what he could, and now it was time for him to move forward. Max's story had been one of loyalty, survival, and second chances. It was a story that would stay with Tom forever, a reminder of the incredible bond that can form between two living beings, even when the world seems cold and distant. Max had taught Tom something valuable, that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope. That love, trust, and loyalty can bring us back from the brink, and that sometimes, the greatest gift we can give is the chance to be whole again. As he looked out over the snowy landscape, Tom knew that he would never forget the dog who had come to his door in the midst of a storm, the dog who had changed his life forever. The story of Max and Tom was just one chapter in a much larger tale of Max was gone. Tom felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that he had been a part of that story. As the quiet of the cabin settles in and the warmth of the fire dances in the hearth, the story of Max and Tom draws to a close. The journey they shared, one of survival, loin chances, of resilience, and of the quiet, powerful bonds that shape our lives. And though and unexpected bonds, reminds us of the incredible power that love and trust can have in our lives. Max, the loyal German shepherd, had endured years of hardship and abandonment, yet despite it all, he never lost his hope. His unwavering loyalty, even in the face of the most brutal circumstances, is a testament to the resilience of the heart. For Tom, a man who had lived in solitude for years, Max's arrival brought not just companionship, but a renewed sense of purpose. In caring for the dog, Tom found healing in a reminder of what it means to offer kindness without expectation. He wasn't just a caretaker, he became part of Max's story, a story that was shaped by both pain and love, by hardship and the eventual triumph of finding home again. Their story is a powerful reminder of how life can surprise us. Sometimes, the companionship we need comes from the most unexpected places, and the bonds we form can heal not only the broken hearts of animals, but also our own. Max's transformation from a scared, cold animal to a strong, trusting companion is the embodiment of survival, the courage to keep moving forward, and the beauty of finding a family again. The reunion between Max and Anna, while bittersweet, is a reminder that love is not bound by time. Even after years of separation, their bond endured. And though Max has found his way back to the woman who once loved him, it is clear that the connection between him and Tom will never fade. They both found something in each other: purpose, loyalty, and hope. This story teaches us that, no matter the circumstances, no matter the odds, the possibility of a new beginning is always within reach. And sometimes, it's the simple act of showing up, of offering help and kindness, that creates the most powerful transformations. Call to action. Max's story is just one of many that need a happy ending. There are countless animals waiting for their second chance, just as Max did. If this story touched your heart, let it inspire you to make a difference. Adopt an animal in need, volunteer at your local shelter, or donate to organizations that provide care and hope to animals who need it most. Animals, like Max, deserve a chance to thrive, to find love, and to experience the beauty of a second chance. You can help by sharing this story, raising awareness about animal abandonment, and supporting those who are working tirelessly to rescue and care for animals in need. If you were moved by this tale of loyalty and survival, please subscribe to our channel and share this video with others who may need a reminder of the power of hope and compassion. Together, we can spread love, change lives, and offer a second chance to those who need it most. Thank you for being a part of this journey. Your support can make a difference, and together, we can help create more stories of hope, survival, and love.